first speaker will be Chelsea Wallis, a 2021 Ramsay Postgraduate Scholar who is a doctoral candidate at Oxford and is concurrently completing a Master's in English. Chelsea holds degrees spanning law, social sciences, the humanities and education from Australian universities as well as Oxford. Previously, Chelsea was a secondary teacher and boarding house mistress in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, where she taught English, French and Latin, as well as coordinating gifted and talented programs. Chelsea currently serves on the editorial board of the Oxford Human Rights Hub and the Oxford Children's Rights Network, and she is a graduate research resident in the Bonavero Institute of Human Rights. She is a writer, a prize-winning poet, a ballet dancer, and a keen musician. This evening, Chelsea will talk on the topic of weaving ourselves into the tapestry of good lives, and will reflect on her time in Oxford. We're delighted to welcome you, Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute delight to meet so many interesting people today. It's really just been such a joy, and I cannot wait to get to know you all better for the next year or so. 2 years ago, I was perched vertiginously on the precipice of a new life. I was no longer absorbed in my work as a school teacher, but ready to be thrust again into the role of pupil, beginning a course of serious study in a place very far from home. I might here justly appropriate the words of Charlotte Brontë, as she wrote in a letter in 1842 when embarking on her final education in Brussels. I was 26 years old a week or two since, and at this ripe time of life I am a schoolgirl, and on the whole, very happy in that capacity. It felt very strange at first to submit to authority instead of exercising it, to obey orders instead of giving them, but I like that state of things. Like Charlotte, I too was leaving my accustomed position for one altogether new and strange, and I knew not how I would fare the great test that loomed before me. Though the group assembled this evening is bound for many different shrines of learning, my account speaks especially to the particular place where I've been privileged to study and to live. Coming to Oxford is a peculiar experience for anybody who makes the effort to pay close attention. This is a place that has always been transient, peopled by new faces, new voices every year. Its habit is change and novelty, and at the same time permanence, of tradition and of scholarly industry, sometimes carved into the very desks themselves. The cast may change, but the chorus repeats itself perpetually. We read, we converse, we write. If we're lucky, we may earn commendation in doing so. And so we will carry on, repeating the experiment now as the instructor, teaching others to read, to converse, to write. If we repeat this pattern for another 900 years, we may come close to approximating the flavour of Oxford life as it is today, a town in which even the stones are infused with this heady concoction of learning. The work of learning is difficult to exhibit. It happens indoors, in private, inside of us. There's no grand revelation of visible change. To look at us, we may appear quite the same as before. And yet it is in these intangible, unquantifiable labours that we begin to do justice to the grand, everlasting project of humanity, that we may one day find ourselves fit to contribute our voices to the great conversation that thrums away across the generations of thinkers, idealists, and poets that came before. It is the visually unexciting, sometimes tedious, and frequently exasperating work of individual scholarly labour that brings each of us here. Everyone in this room knows what it is to apply oneself day upon day, fulfilling the real meaning of the classical Latin term for a student, discipula or discipulus, a person characterised by that self-discipline without which no truly great work can ever be accomplished. And so, we tug along the threads of what we care about and what we spend our thoughts on, winding them together with much effort over time, in and out of our lives, in the hope that we can entwine them into that glorious tapestry woven of all the great lives and good works on which our own labours are built. This is the work of a lifetime, but the years we spend in these hallowed places of learning are the foundation for the life that comes afterwards. Oxford has a way of surprising you out of the quotidian and reminding you that the ceiling has been lifted. The intimidating scores of alumni are testament to just how much is possible. It has the habit of convincing you that it is perfectly normal to be surrounded by what is truly exceptional. In what other world could I find myself singing Mozart arias in a room in which Mozart himself had once performed? It's a place where I have simultaneously never worked harder, but also where I have felt somehow out of reach of the worries that might otherwise hover around me. It's a place transfixed between the now and the always, a place where you need only look around to catch glimpses of the sublime. In testament to this, I'd like to close with some brief lines which bubbled up in my head on a perfectly ordinary spring afternoon on Brasenose Lane. One side of the path is dozing in the sun. The other is cool with moss and malaise. Even the bells are cloaked in somnolence. Windows creak in unaccustomed labour, an empty stairwell lit bright with the teeth of early evening, while lamps gleam clean through between the branches. Surely there is nowhere else to be than here. Thank you very much.